Hello and welcome to another episode of Beer Man's Noble Beer Reviews. Today I have another beer from Casita, Cerveceria out of Farmville, North Carolina. This beer is called, Bladow. This is an Imperial breakfast stout. It says brewed with oats, lactose, and Dynamite Roasters coffee. I'm not familiar with Dynamite Roasters. It is 11.5 ABV. I've not had this before. I've just been recently getting on the bandwagon for these guys, and I heard from a couple people that this beer is really good. So I grabbed the can of it. I think it was only like $5.50 or something. Pretty reasonably priced. Gonna crack it open and see what we got. It's pretty dark head there. See that? It's dissipating really quickly, which that kind of worries me a little bit. I don't know, for whatever reason, whenever a stout's head dissipates really quickly, it makes me think that the whole thing is going to be overcarbonated and have a lot of carbonic acid, which I don't really like in a stout. But you can see it pours a very, very dark brown, almost like straight black, and that head was very, very dark for a stout. I mean, well, for any beer, especially, but for a stout even. So, I do get there's a good bit of coffee there. A tiny bit of like soy sauce that you get sometimes from big stouts. That, I mean, it's not something that bothers me in small amounts. If it's like the dominant aroma or flavor, then I hate it. In small doses, it doesn't really bother me, and that's what it's not really big here. There is a little bit of a metallic aspect that I get from some coffee beers, and it's also, I don't know why, but it seems to go hand in hand with the ones that are overcarbonated. Is they have that like metallic character to them. I mean, I definitely get like some general ethanol too. I mean, this is a pretty big beer, so I'm not that surprised about it. But I do get that. There's some dark chocolate in there too. Overall, it smells pretty good though. I'm gonna give it a go. Huh. So, the base is really interesting. It's very, very viscous without being very sweet and without being like super high in alcohol. I mean, I know 11.5 is nothing to sneeze at, but it's also not that strong by today's Imperial Stout standards. Usually when you find a beer that's this viscous, you're pushing at least 13%, 13 to 15. And a lot of times it's also that viscous because it's under attenuated and there's a lot of residual sugar in it. And this is neither one of those. I mean, it's not that strong, and it's also not that sweet either. So that metallic character that I was getting in aroma, I do get it in the flavor too. But I know that it's just something from the coffee because I've gotten these types of beers before. And I don't want to say I don't want people to think that this is infected because it's not infected, but there is a little bit of like acidic quality at the beginning of the flavor too. But it's not tart like a sour beer. It's just acidic coffee. And I think that that's where that metallic note that I pick up is coming from as well. Um, so I think it's just from the roast and the style of coffee. But it's funny because I get that at the beginning, and then I get a big wash of just a nice roasty, big boozy stout, and then the background is like this really, really flavorful, robust dark chocolate espresso note that is fantastic. If the whole beer was that flavor, I would be gushing about this. It's still very good, but it's kind of a tale of two halves, if that makes sense. It does. It shows its alcohol mid palate though. It's pretty boozy. Um, this is something that could absolutely withstand barrel aging. This reminds me of like it doesn't taste like a Bell stout, but it reminds me of how they can take a stout that's only 10.5% and put it in barrel. And of course, it's going to pick up 1 or 2% in barrels, but it's only getting to that like 13% ABV being in barrels. And at that point, it feels like such a massive beer. Whereas a lot of these beers today, they start like the beer itself finishes at 14%. And then barrel aging them pushes them to 15.5, 16%. I'm not saying that they're lying about that, um, but it's just there's other ways to get to that type of thing without being super sweet and under attenuated. And I'm not saying that those breweries are only doing that for that reason, try to get that thickness and that um, just that viscosity and the crazy mouthfeel, but because I understand a lot of people just want that flavor. They want that big, sweet, candy dessert flavor with all the other stuff that's thrown in it. But there's other ways to get to that without drinking it and feeling like you're going to go into diabetic shock. Um, it's not easy. There's not a lot of brewers that can do it, and to me, that's really what shows who knows what the heck they're doing. Because like this is a really good example. I mean, Bells and Founders, of course, because those guys have been doing that shit for like 30 years at this point, and they're absolutely masters at their craft. But honestly, Todd at Fun of Four, the couple stouts I've only done one of them on this channel, but a couple of the barrel aged stouts that he's been doing, they're really big freaking beers, but they're not under attenuated at all. They're not sweet. They're just huge, boozy, flavorful. They have additives in them, but they're only one or two things, and it's not desserty. It's just you get that flavor, and it's a big beer. Um, now, this is not similar to those in profile. They both are very. This and the coffee beer that that was barrel aged too, so they're really not comparable. But just saying, you can make a really solid viscous base stout that would stand up to barrel aging without it being incredibly sweet, and this is a really good example of that. I will say too, this can is almost at room temperature. Um, and that's just because I felt like drinking it, and I realized that I didn't put it in the fridge. I actually had it sitting outside, and it got covered in rain, which cooled it down a little bit, but it's still like it's probably 65 degrees maybe. Um, but I'm not mad that I did that. Would I generally drink something like this a little colder? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm I'm actually more blown away now that I think about that how warm this is. It's not warm, it's not hot, but it's how warm it is compared to the way most beer is served. Uh, that this doesn't taste boozier than it does because it's I said that in the mid palate it definitely shows its alcohol, but that's because it's almost room temp. Like I guarantee if this was at some places would serve this at like 45, but even if this was cellar temp like 50 to 58 somewhere around there, that alcohol would be really hidden. I feel like because even now when I say that you get it in the mid palate, it's not super dominant. It's just it's there because that it is a stronger beer. But anyways, I'm getting too far off topic here. I'm really glad I bought this. I would definitely buy this again. This is a really really solid coffee imperial stout. It's honestly one of the non barrel aged ones I've had in a long time, without a bunch of other stuff thrown in it. And this is just another beer from Casita that makes me realize that I need to start buying everything they come out with because this is very very good. Uh, but I think that's all I got on this one. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think, and I look forward to doing the next one. Thanks.